The point is that women can vote against the interests of men. Now, maybe you could say that that's okay when it comes to democracy, but it's really not okay when it comes to things like warfare, when they can vote to send men off to war. Like, that's just like criminally unjust from my view. It's so unjust.
This is going to be a tricky conversation, but you could make the same argument about abortion. And I know that, you believe that it is murder. However, I hold the view, and I want you to trust in me in the sense that you don't think that I would be very cool with like murdering babies. So when I say I think abortion,
it's your view, it's not a baby.
It's not a baby. It's not
I understand.
Sentient yet.
Yeah. You don't consider that to be human life. Well, you consider scientifically. You consider it scientifically to be human life, but you don't consider life to begin until there's some sort of cognitive sentience or something like this, right?
Yeah, something to that degree. I think it was it St. Augustine that said, when it starts to kick, that's when it's a person, something like that. I think that abortion and birth control, because women are, very much encumbered by our physical forms, our biological capacity to have children, I think that the only way we can have equality is to have access to birth control and abortion, so that we can participate in the economy the same way men can. So when men vote against women's interests and can force us to carry children and destroy our avenue to freedom, financial independence, it strikes me the same way as the draft does to you. I feel like that's...
Yeah, I understand.
Yes.
Here's something interesting, though. Mm-hmm. Let's just start with this, because I think we should get our terms correct here.
Okay.
When you say force, right, nobody actually forces you to have a child, even if you can't abort it. Isn't that actually the case? Nobody's actually forcing you to do that. The case is that you're using what's called an ambiguous equivocation, which is a fallacious form of argumentation. The equivocation is that you would have us believe, through the nebulousness of the language of the term force, that somebody is using some type of physical compellence to make you do a thing, when in fact the truth is that they're not doing that at all. You're just simply not allowed to do a thing. That's different than forcing you to do a thing.
I mean,
so like,
a law that says I cannot drive in the left lane, or I cannot drive, I don't know, I can't go 100 miles per hour on the highway.
Yeah.
Yes, I can technically do it, but there will be consequences. Most likely me probably dying in a horrible accident.
Yeah, so is a red light, do you think that a red light is force?
No, but there's consequences.
But it's not force. And that's the same thing here. You have a law, but it's not. There's no force that's being used.
Technically, no one's forcing you to go to war. You could choose prison. What is it? What is the term for abandoning?
Desertion.
Desertion. Yeah, you could desert. Like you aren't technically being forced to do so. You could take the penalty for not signing up for the draft. Could refuse the draft.
The penalty for draft dodging can be you get shot. That's a little bit different than...
Is that the case?
That's the case, yeah.
Because there were a lot of people that dodged the draft.
And they were given immunity, basically, from the government. They pardoned them. But it's not just imprisonment. If you do desertion, for instance, you can be shot. And they shot people for desertion all the time. People were shot for deserting their post.
Well, you're still not being forced to do it.
My search here just on this topic, in the USA, desertion is a serious offense, and the penalty for desertion during a time of war can be death, though other punishments like imprisonment are possible.
Okay, what about draft dodging? And what happens if you refuse to sign up for the draft? You can't vote? Is that essentially...
You can't vote, you can't buy a gun. There's other penalties associated with it, too. which have to do with tax
technically,
filing.
You're not being forced to do it. There will be severe consequences, but you technically don't have to sign up for the draft. It's no one's forcing you to. No one's holding a gun to your head and saying you must sign it.
Do you want the penalties for draft dodging?
Yes.
It can include federal felonies like fines up to $250,000 and or up to 5 years in prison for failing to register. Other consequences like state level restrictions on things like college eligibility or driver's licenses can occur. And I believe there's some preclusion from receiving federal student loans and preclusion also from certain federal jobs.
Yeah, so I understand the argument you're making. The argument for equivalency here is, wait a second, nobody's forcing you to do this, to go off to war or something like this, right? I guess my argument there would be pretty easy, which is that this is outside of your control. Drafting is outside of your control.
Yeah.
Having a child is not outside of your control for almost any woman who's ever been pregnant. They're almost always pregnant, and that's within their control.
Yes.
And so I don't think that men, given the punitive punishment of years in prison for felonies or potentially being shot for desertion, even if they do go, or having the penalty raised for draft avoidance if we needed men, which would probably be, again, you'd probably get shot. I don't think that these are equivalent statements because, one, you are being voted and force is to be used in order to compel you to do these things. Nobody's compelling you to get pregnant. Nobody ever forces you to get pregnant. Well, unless it's SA, right? But the thing is like, it does, but it's not, it doesn't account for the majority of cases, the overwhelming majority of cases. And if it were the case that you argued to me, but in the case that I am forced, right? What about then? I think that you would be able to negotiate that out with the other side. I think they would be willing to say, in cases of SA, of incest, of things where force and compellence was used, they have said many times that they would be willing to negotiate that out if it stopped all of their abortions.
Right.
But the left, that's not really your argument because you want women to have that regardless.
Well, the issue with that is that getting someone charged with SA, I'm sure you would agree, is a tedious and can be a very long process. So how would that work? If, let's say, I was SA'd and I became pregnant and I showed up to Planned Parenthood in a state where, well, I guess they're closing the Planned Parenthoods, and I said, I need an abortion, I was SA'd, and they go, okay, we need the paperwork to prove that you were SA'd. I could potentially be looking at months, maybe even years of trying to prove that I was, SA'd. And in the meantime, I would be pregnant, and then I would reach a point where an abortion would not make any sense.
Well, let's even assume that you were able to negotiate this out in such a way where if you just made the claim that you were SA'd and named whoever the victimizer was, and you were in the process of that, then you could still get the shmishmortion. But if it was determined that you were lying or made it up, then there was some sort of criminal penalty towards you.
But what happens, do you think that every time a charge is dismissed, that means that the accused is innocent?
No.
Because I think a lot of the time people who do things
by
like
that same argument, then I have reason to doubt the SA standards, because do you think that if a person is convicted, that that means that they're guilty?
No.
Well, then if that's the case, then we have, so all we can do then is go off of data, unless it's questionable data, right? What else can we do? Because the idea here of you just saying, well, they may be innocent, it's like, okay, well, then that person who was convicted of SA may be not guilty, right? He may be innocent, and the person who's innocent may actually be guilty. It's hard to say. But in this case, if you went and you filed this, right, let's just say somehow we got it to where you could actually move through the system very quickly in order to get this abortion if it was proven that it was due specifically to rape, right? Great, got that. But that's not really what you want, right? You want unfettered access to abortion by every woman, don't you?
Yeah.
So it has so any of these arguments, the micro nuanced arguments, which are around rape and incest, don't really matter that much, because ultimately that you don't
have a lot of concerns about that being, the process of having to prove this to get that exemption. I do genuinely, not out of self-interest, but out of, fear for other women and girls.
Yeah, but assuming that was a possibility that we could expedite such a process quickly,
Yeah,
right?
I would still want abortion to be
Yeah, so
accessible
then who
to
cares? You're
everyone.
arguing over something that's almost inconsequential in comparison to the overwhelming amount of abortions which are done, and they're done as a form of birth control.
I mean, they're not frequently done.
Yeah, they're frequently done. They're not rare.
No, they're not rare.
And they were
It's
always,
like
we
a
were
once
promised
in
they
a
were going to be
lifetime-
rare, but they're not rare.
Once in a lifetime occurrence. Actually, Brian, could you Google
Sure.
what percentage of women have an abortion in their lifetimes? Because again, it is a form of birth
I think it's
control.
over 40% of women have one.
Yeah, but are they having abortions every year, or are they having one?
I have it. According to that doesn't matter. An estimated 24.7% of women in the United States will have an abortion by the time they are 45.
Okay.
And that translates to approximately 1 in 4 women.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
not quite
it's-
as high as I thought.
Yeah.
But 1 in 4 is still fucking high.
But it's I don't think that most people get repeat abortions. It's usually the cases of that, I think, are fairly rare. Brian, I don't know if you
Why?
can fact check.
But why does like frequency here matter?
Well, 'cause
It's still
if we're
being used
talking
as a
about-
form of birth control.
If
That's
we're
the
talking
truth.
about a birth control, and we're thinking about, like birth control is typically something you have to use every time you engage in intercourse, or it is some sort of hormonal thing that you are, using all the time. What I'm saying is that abortion, it's this idea of it as like comparable to the pill or to a condom is.
Well, it's comparable only in the way that it's being used as a form of birth control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess it's preventing a birth, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's comparable to birth control because that's what birth control is doing, preventing a birth.
Yes, but it's a painful, traumatic process that most people do not want to undergo. It's like a last resort,
But
It happens.
yeah, and as a form of birth control. So like
yeah.
that's and the most common forms of abortion are forms of birth control. So the thing is like almost all women have an abortion not because they're SA'd or because of incest or their life is at risk, but because they use it as a form of birth control.
Well, it's because the birth control that they were using failed, typically.
So now they use this other form of birth control.
Yes.
I think we're saying the exact same thing here.
Sure,
I don't feel
yeah.
like we're even speaking past each other. So the thing is like that to me that's fucking insane. First of all, like why would you even want to advocate for a society in which female hormonal birth control was even a thing anyway? It fucks women up. Like it fucks them all up.
I mean,
It makes them all mental and fucking crazy and fucking all kinds of shit.